What's going on, people? This is Kish, Yardie, Views, and Vlogs. And in today's episode, well, this is going to be the first of the series. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to the video. Watch the full video so you can get the full value out the game that I drop. In this episode, we're going to be speaking about, or this series, so we're going to talk about how the boomer generation of men created the bad black woman we see today. And in addition, to how those boomer men set younger men up to fail in relationships, right? So we're going to talk about it. We're going to go into it. So, because a lot of times those boomer generation of men, what they did is they taught black men to be custodians instead of the authority. Now, you can be a custodian of something and also be the authority in your household, but you can also be a custodian. But what black men did is that they took away the black woman generation of men. They stripped the younger men of what it was to be an authoritative figure in your house, and just made you a custodian of your house, right? And a custodian is that you're managing something. It's like you're a project manager or you're a janitor. You're managing that place based upon somebody else's instructions or program. You're not managing that place based upon your own program or your own instruction. So let's get it. So now if you're a custodian, but you're also the authority, that's something different. All right. So let's go. The boomer generation of men. Yeah, okay. The boomer generation of men, especially the happy wife, happy life segment, created the modern dysfunctional dating market by surrendering male authority, centering women, female emotion, and conditioning men to tolerate disrespect. They taught men that masculinity meant silence, sacrifice, and endurance, while teaching women that entitlement, emotional dominance, and lack of accountability were normal. In the home, fathers failed to check domineering mothers. Sons were taught to absorb disrespect, especially from sisters, while daughters received unconditional love regardless of behaviors. Boys received conditional love, performance-based approval, while girls were affirmed simply for existing. This created men who serve, and women who expect service. In the church, pastors reinforce this imbalance by selectively teaching male sacrifice without teaching female qualification. Because remember, the Bible does teach you about male sacrifice and provision for a woman, but it also teaches you the woman that qualify for that, right? Pastors took away that qualification. Men were told to lay down, even especially today in today's church, right? Men were told to lay down their lives for women who did not meet biblical standards, while women were shielded from accountability. Some pastors even contributed directly to this function by sleeping with women in the congregation and then teaching other men to step up and clean up the mess. The boomer generation created these women, failed to discipline or structure them, then trained younger men to tolerate, fund, and emotionally absorb the consequences. The modern dating crisis is not an accident, it is an inheritance. So from Gen X to the millennials, we're inheriting the problems and issues that the boomer generation of men caused. And then now we're taking accountability for it, and they're saying it's our fault. Every time we get into a discussion with a boomer, they never want to admit this. The modern dating dysfunction is largely the result of boomer era male leadership. Failures both in the household and the church where male authority was surrendered, female accountability was removed, and younger men were socialized into servitude rather than leadership. This produced a generation of entitled women and conflict-avoidant men, destabilizing family structure and pair-bonding norms. The boomer male conditioning messages. Boomer men normalize the following ideas. Happy wife, happy life. Your job is to keep her pleased. Your needs don't matter. Avoid conflict at all costs. Masculinity equals tolerating disrespect. Never defend yourself. Apologize even when you're right. Peace is greater than principle. Real men don't complain. Provide silently. Hidden framework being taught. Female emotions equal authority. Male boundaries equal selfish. Love equals servitude. Masculinity equals unlimited self-sacrifice. This is where a lot of the language you see here on in the social medias and the modern day spaces, when you look on these panels, this is where that language came from. This is where you see women saying, well, these men need to go back to being how my father was. Because her father was a happy wife, happy life idiot. Well, he self-sacrificed to her and sent to her and the mother. You understand? This is why they tell you your male boundaries is insecure. Ironically, a lot of dating coaches preach this too. Anyway. Household dynamics that mothers dominated fathers emotionally. Fathers failed to check disrespect. Sons watched their mothers override male authority. Sisters disrespected brothers without consequences. So, example, you could be a sister to a brother and you're hitting him, and then they'll teach the brother from the father and the mother not to hit girls. Or she could be disrespectful to that boy, to the brother, and the father will just let it happen and tell him that this is what you got to deal with. This is a normal thing, right? Fathers enforce obedience on boys, indulgence on girls, resulting in psychological programming. Boys learn to serve women, girls learn to expect submission. Authority became female coded. Masculinity became apologetic. Gendered love imbalance. Daughters, unconditional love, no behavior correction, constant affirmation. Sons, conditional love, performance-based approval, discipline without authority, modeling. Now, I have no issue with male performance, right? Because as a male when you're performing, you have to perform to keep society going. So I have no issue with that. But what the boomer generation of men used to do is they taught like they would never acknowledge something that the younger black men would do or accomplish. You understand? And I don't know how to articulate or describe it, but I remember growing up and experiencing that no matter what you do, how well you perform, it was never enough in the eyes of the boomer generation of men. So now you were always seeking that approval because you never really got it from them, from those generation of men. Like the boomer generation of men, black men were fucking brutal. So I'm saying, talk shit to you, say soul crushing shit to you. And then you couldn't respond to it because it was saying if you respond to it, you'd be emotional. That's how they trick black men how to take disrespect, because those boomer generations of men were being very disrespectful. But now you respond to it with righteous rage and anger. Like if I'm in a situation with another guy, man my age, and they're talking shit to me or disrespecting me, I can respond back to them, putting up my boundaries. But boomer generation of men taught black men to just take that, like they just talk shit to you and call it tough love. There's a difference between tough love and talking shit to you just to talk shit to you. Right? But a lot of the performance-based approval, I don't know how to articulate or describe it, because how fathers raise their boys, they only loved you based on how you were performing something, right? So unless if you weren't performing something, they didn't love you, or they didn't show you that love or respect. But with the daughters, daughters could be a lazy bum. They'll still give them love and unconditional, constant affirmation. Oh, baby, how would they say it again? Baby girl, you always be my daughter. But if you're a son and you do something wrong, you instant kick out. Like, for example, listen to Shaq, how he described how he raises his daughter versus how he raises his sons. I believe Shaq said that his sons got to go out there and work and get theirs, but his daughters get to stay in the house. That's a perfect example, Shaq. I think Shaq is a Gen Xer, right? But anyway, then again, Shaq was raised by who? Boomers. Outcome: entitled women, approval-seeking men. And guess what? Gen X what made Gen X and millennials born in the 90s, like myself, what made us not have to rely on validation or approval was because we didn't get it. And we just did without it. We just said, okay, fuck you, fuck the world, fuck what you're talking about. We're gonna go take what's ours, whether you like it or not. That's what made Gen X. That's why Gen X was the original young niggas, young nigga energy. Because Gen X, they didn't get shit from there. They were the latchkey kids. Boomers didn't give a fuck. So, a lot of millennials was raised by boomers too, like myself. Like, I love my father to death. I love him, appreciate him now. I respect him. He was there in my life. He gave me the game, but I had to learn to do without my father's approval, or do without my father's um, validation of me. Because no matter what I did growing up, it was never enough in his eyes. Understand? Now, I will give him credit. He did acknowledge when I lost weight and I started doing martial arts, but still, it was always something I got to do more. And I understand that from fathers, right? They always want to see a kid do more, the son do more. But my pops was brutal still. He a Jamaican boomer at that, and how Caribbean boomers are with their kids, with their sons, right? So yeah, a lot of us have to learn to do without that. I'm saying, and I guess it kind of created a lot of effective men. That created a lot of effective men. Not gonna lie about that. I just like there should have been a balance between teaching young boys by the boomers how to do without validation or approval, but at the same time rewarding the men or showing that love to the young boys they were raising. You know what I'm saying? When they did the right things or they were doing the correct things, because you don't always want to chase constant approval from people, especially from your father. Because young boys look up to their fathers, they look up to men, older men, for that guidance and instructions. But it is what it is. Dating market consequences. Women believe they are the prize by default. Men start relationships from inferiority. Women are not taught how to keep a man. Women are taught to earn basic respect. Female dysfunction is normalized. Male dissatisfaction is silence. So let me explain why men are taught to earn basic respect. Basic respect from a black woman to a black man is, if I tell you, let's go here at this time, you actually show up on time. I now got to check or correct you or ghost you for you to understand that. Or if you're on a date and you're now on your phone instead of paying attention to that date. Basic respect. Or when we're having a conversation and you want to call me outside my name or talk shit to me. We're having a basic conversation, argument. Basic respect. You shouldn't have to teach women to have basic respect to men. But with black women, if you look on these internet in the modern discourse, you got to teach them that. And it's basic respect. Right? When I say men start relationships from inferiority, if you're constantly being taught from your boomer generation that women are above you and to prioritize women, no matter what you do, when you approach women, you approach her from, I'm inferior. This woman is more valuable than me. If you go on a date, this is what makes you wait, even though she's 2 hours late, and you should have left by that time. This is what makes you wait for her for 2 hours, because you believe that her prize is worth waiting for. This is what a lot of boomer generation of men taught you. All right, and then the male dissatisfaction is silence part comes from now. When you're displeased with your woman because she's not respecting you, she's not treating you correctly. A lot of boomer generation of men told you to stick it out and stay there and not to leave. Right? And when you go back to why there's a 70% divorce rate, I guarantee you that's coming from the boomer generation. I guarantee you. Because a lot of the boomer generation of men, they didn't stick with their women. And we're going to get into that part. The boomer generation of men, that 70% divorce rate, I guarantee you the boomer generation boosted those rates up. Because the boomer generation of men, they left their women to go deal with the side chick across the road. But we're going to get into that. Church and pastor layer. Second reinforcement. Male sacrifice taught without female qualification. Biblical standards apply selectively to men. Women with dysfunctional past elevated without correction. Men encouraged to save or redeem women. Accountability avoided to keep female attendance high. So what do I mean by this in this passage, right? Say, for example, a woman was a 3 or 4 in her past life. She was out there ripping around in the street. The pastor doesn't tell those women, look, when you step into my church, into the house of God, the men you want are men of God, and they're going to have certain expectations of the women to qualify for them, for these men of God. And he don't tell those 3 or 4s, look, you gotta rehab yourself, you gotta clean yourself off of your 3 or 4 past, you gotta walk this line for 3 to 4 years or 2 years before I can say, okay, cool, you qualified to get access to the men of God. They don't say that. They tell black men to marry those women without those women, black men of God who are righteous and about their business, to marry women who don't qualify for that. And then when the black man gets into a relationship with that woman because he was encouraged by the pastor in the church, and that situation fails, not because of the man himself, but because of that woman not qualifying, they'll blame the man for picking her, even though they told him to pick her. All right. And a lot of pastors encourage men to save or redeem women, which the woman has to redeem herself. Anyway, worst cases, pastors impregnate women, congregation pressure to support those women, more authority collapses. Final outcome. Women created dysfunction, shielded women from consequences, removed male authority, trained younger men to clean up the damage, called it love, peace, and being a good man. This is why women keep talking about a good man. That's what they mean by being a good man. Being a good man is not holding women accountable. Being a good man is tolerating her disrespect. A good man is getting run over. Right? A good man is happy wife, happy life boomer. The boomer generations of pimps and players. Oh, I gotta call this one out. Another major faction of the boomer generation that helped create today's dating dysfunction was the pimps, players, and macs. Many of these men spent their early lives exploiting women, pimping them, abusing them, and normalizing sexual chaos. When some of these men later cleaned up their lives through religion, politics, or pro-black movements, they didn't properly repair the damage. Instead, they overcorrected. Rather than restoring standards and accountability, they flipped into a framework where men were told to maintain women, without ever defining what women had to be to qualify for that maintenance. They borrowed fragments of Victorian era gentleman language without understanding that historically not every woman was treated as a lady. Women qualified for I can't say this word, for elevation through behavior, restraint, and submission to authority. At the same time, these former players had a vested interest in keeping the sexual economy flowing. After women aged out of the player pimp phase, they needed regular men to accept and wife them. So younger men were conditioned to tolerate women with disqualifying past and told that refusing them meant insecurity or weakness. This created a feedback loop. Women are incentivized to live recklessly because a man would always be available later to step up. Step up, right? You ain't supposed to step up for a woman that don't qualify for you. You only step up for the woman that do qualify for you, right? And how does she qualify? Let me show you how a woman qualifies for you. By showcasing you these 8 pillars right here. She got to showcase to you these 8 pillars. She got to showcase to you submission, obedience, respect, love, like, consistency, emotional help, alignment with your mission, right? And this is the most important part. Right? Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? But these things have to be there. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect because nothing's 100% perfect. All right? It's about orientation, right? So let me show you this most important part. This is most important. Autonomy and accountability. To understand why none of these traits are demands responsibility to the force. You must understand autonomy. Autonomy, objective definition. Autonomy is a person's independent ability to make choices and self-govern their behavior, emotions, and actions without external control. How autonomy applies here. Because a woman is autonomous, her submission is her choice, her responsibility. Her liking and loving you is her own emotional decision. Her consistency depends on her discipline. Not well, it depends on your coaching, but it doesn't. Why? Because her autonomy has to choose your coaching, right? She has to be disciplined by your coaching. If she doesn't want to be disciplined by your coaching, you know, that's on her, not you. Her emotional health is her job to maintain. Her alignment with your mission is voluntary, right? A woman cannot blame a man for a lack of respect, submission, obedience, consistency, emotional stability, alignment, liking him, loving him. These are her behaviors governed by her autonomy. She cannot say, I don't respect you because of you. I don't submit because of you. I'm inconsistent because of you. Those statements violate autonomy, right? So that's what that means. No, that's the right woman right there. She got to showcase those traits. All right. So back to this. This needed regular men to accept wifedom, so younger men were conditioned to tolerate women with disqualifying past and told that refusing them meant insecurity or weakness. A lot of playing pimps who are in the dating coach scenario, this is what they teach y'all. They teach y'all that if you don't want a wife over 3 or 4, because you yourself know that's not for you, that you're insecure or weak. All right. This created a feedback loop. Women are incentivized to live recklessly because a man would always be available later to step up. While men were shamed into accepting relationships they were never built to navigate, modern dating cultures who push open relationships and monogamy are not doing so for male benefit. They're protecting access and maintaining this flow of sex under the guise of masculinity, right? Because true masculinity is living your life the way you want to live it, right? And being honest and true about your intentions and, you know, being who you are, being who you are, flawed, like being who you are with all your flaws, right? And at the same time, owning who you are and what you're about, and how you want to live your life, and being the best at what you do, right? So if you choose to be non-monogamous, that's how you live it. But if you choose to be monogamous, that's also how you live it, right? You're still a man, or masculine man, whether you want to be non-monogamous or monogamous. At the end of the day, right? Boomer era pimps. So let me say this. When I'm preaching monogamy, or I'm preaching traditionalism, I'm not pushing that on men to follow. And I'm not going to tell you you're insecure because you don't want to follow what I think a relationship should be. Right. What I'm doing is trying to create a lane or revitalize the courtship energy or the courtship for people who's looking for that. You understand? That's what I'm doing. And really, truly, I'm only enforcing what historically was already there, because monogamy is the foundation of America. America's built off of monogamous relationships, right? So I am not going to tell a dude who's not looking for that he's insecure because he don't want that, because he knows what's good for him and he knows what's not good for him, and that's okay too. It's okay to say, yo, yeah, I'm insecure about a 3 or 4 because I know that type of bitch was not good to me. That's not a good thing for me. That's like telling a guy he's insecure because he doesn't like to eat cake. Well, he knows if he eats cake, it's going to make him fat, so he tends to stay away from that. But anyway, boomer era pimps and players contributed to modern dating dysfunction by overcorrecting for their past exploitation of women, replacing accountability with unconditional maintenance, while simultaneously conditioning non-player men to absorb the long-term consequences of sexual chaos. This preserved the sexual economy for elite men while destabilizing pair bonding norms for average men, right? So the elite men is the high status guys, right? But Kevin Samuels, he didn't preach that. There was a reason why he was doing that, because at the end of the day, Kevin Samuels wanted the average everyday guy to get into a relationship. Kevin Samuels only used the high value man because that's what black women were asking for. Everybody else took that out of context and created what they wanted to create it for whatever purpose, right? The pimp player boomer class. Many prominent boomer men came from pimping or hyper-promiscuous lifestyles. Women were exploited, abused, and discarded. Sexual access was centralized among small group of men. Among small group of men. Long-term consequences were externalized onto others. Key points. These men understood the damage they caused, but did not repair it correctly. The overcorrection phase. After cleaning up their lives, they reframed masculinity as maintenance. Men were told to serve, sustain, and absorb. Women were elevated without qualification. Accountability was a rule to compensate for past harm. Problem. Repair turned into moral surrender, not structural correction. Misuse of maintainer language. Maintainer implies upkeep, not ownership or authority. Maintenance serves someone else's system or vision. Men were trained to preserve outcomes they did not create. No standards were set for women to qualify for that upkeep. Effect, men became custodians of dysfunction, not leaders of families. Misapplied Victorian framework. Gentleman culture never elevated all women equally. Lady status required discipline, restraint, and submission. Boomer men borrowed aesthetics, not rules. Standards were removed, but expectations remained. Result, status without structure. A lot of black boomer men did this. Condition younger men to accept disqualified women. Players did exit rounds for women aging out of chaos. Regular men were shamed into accepting them. Refusal was labeled insecurity. Historically, male mate selection norms were erased. Reality, most men are not built to manage women with heavy sexual or emotional baggage. Right? Because you're not. Right? If your job is to protect, provide, and produce, and you have to worry about a woman's sexual past keep coming up to haunt you, and you're trying to build a future, why would you be secure in managing that? Right? If men will wife women, regardless of past behavior, there's no incentive for restraint. Regular women adopt chaotic lifestyles. The cycle repeats across generations. Outcome, sexual chaos becomes normalized, permanent, and generational. Modern dating cultures and open relationships. Open relationships benefit high access men only. Non-monogamy keeps women circulating. Masculinity language is used as camouflage. Men are shamed for wanting exclusivity. Truth. What one man is secure with does not obligate another man to accept it. Remember that. What one man is secure with does not obligate another man to accept it. Just because you're secure with your wife getting banged out by other dudes don't mean I have to accept it. That's for your world and your universe and your way of living. And guess what? That's because I won't accept what you're doing don't mean I'm more man than you. The follow-up insight ecosystem pressure. Non-monogamy remains viable because average men commit without qualification. Women retain safety nets after high-risk behavior. Players face no pressure to change. If regular men stop absorbing consequences, women would self-reflect for stability. Commitment would regain value. Players would be forced to court or exit. Key insight. The market doesn't change because men keep stabilizing it. This is why they keep shaming y'all to keep dating the modern women you see out here today, or a certain type of women. Because everybody's a modern person today. All of us is modern. And pretty soon, 10 years from now, this is going to be traditional, and 10 years from now is going to be modern, technically. But This is why they keep conditioning people, or men, or black men, to keep dating how the dysfunctional black women. Because as long as you keep dating them, that's rewarding them. That's stabilizing the dysfunction. When you no longer date them, that destabilizes the dysfunction. Now the when black women have to have a choice, step their game up or die, basically. Understand? But in black culture, as long as you got the Dr. Umar Johnsons, the Simps, the pimps, the Mac niggas, or whatever else that's out there, I don't see black women changing for the next 100 years. I think they're going to be the same way. Boomer men who helped create today's dysfunction were the ones who left. The men who went to get cigarettes and never came back. So this class of boomer men, right? The last major group of boomer men who helped create today's dysfunction were the ones who left, the men who went to get cigarettes and never came back. These men didn't just abandon women. They abandoned families they helped create before they understood how to lead, correct, or select properly. A lot of these men were dealing with women who were becoming combative, argumentative, and influenced by early feminism. These women were supposed to operate under traditional standards, but the men didn't have the tools, backbone, or framework to check the behavior or correct it. Instead of leading and correcting or leaving before having children, they left after, once kids were already involved. What many of these men actually did was not reject family altogether. They found a better woman later. They went on to create structured households with other women and raise other children properly. The problem is they had already created children with women they were not compatible with and abandoned those families without repair or accountability. Now, see, the boomer generation of black men, they didn't know how, I don't know why they didn't know how to vet women. Because the silent generation and the greatest generation knew how to do it. I don't know why this generation of men didn't know how to do that. I don't know why. I don't know why they picked black women who are feminists. Because now, if you start picking, you know why? Because the black women of those times who were feminists, they were not as ratchet as today's black women are feminist. They were actually more intelligent. Go look at some of those old videos. And it was taught to black men, don't pay attention to what women say, pay attention to what they do. So guess what those feminist black women did? They said, okay, cool. So since you're not going to pay attention to what I'm saying, you don't think what I'm saying, I'm going to do what I'm saying. Well, cool, then be stupid. And guess what? Those feminist black women did exactly what they said. Because if you listen to the feminist black women of that time, they spoke more eloquent, they were more intelligent, they were more friendly, they were able to have structured conversations and back and forth. Today's feminist women, they're not capable of doing that. They're more ratchet. So I think that's what threw them off, right? And then when it came time for boomer black men to get into a relationship, and this is my opinion and theory, with those women, it became something totally different. And again, the boomer generation of men, I don't know what, I don't know, I don't know. I don't know why they were taught to, I don't know why they accepted this. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Somebody, maybe the Gen X men can tell me. Maybe if Angry Man see this video, he can say it. I have, because I don't know. Right? That abandonment created resentment. The children left behind grew up without fathers, watching their mother struggle, became bitter, and reinterpret the situation through a feminist lens. That's where you start hearing messaging like, we don't need fathers, and women can do it on their own. That wasn't empowerment, it was trauma rationalization. Those women raised Gen X and early millennials with bitterness. With that bitterness, teaching daughters that men leave and teaching sons that fathers are optional or unreliable. You remember that video? Let me show you. Let me show you. The Black Family 1986. Let me show it. Black Family 6. Find it. Oh, no, that's something different. 1986? I don't know if I could find it. Some of you probably gonna know what I'm talking about, but I 6. There it is. The content isn't available. Oh, I'm about to say they cut this shit off. I'm about to say they're trying to erase all the black woman's fuckery. Hold on. So let me see this. Yeah.
None of you are married. Raise your hand if you would like to be married to your baby's father. 1. The rest of you who don't plan to get married, why don't you plan to get married? I'd like to know that. You already have your child to think about, and then a whole family to care for. You know, it's a lot of responsibility.
Black men could never say this. If we said that, we'd be called all kind of losers, lames, and not men. She could be still considered a black woman, even though she's saying this.
And then you don't want the commitments.
I wouldn't want no man holding me down because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really.
I didn't have a father. My father wasn't in the home, so it really male figures are not substantially important in the family.
Now, let me explain that properly now, right? So as you saw in that video, what we were saying. Now, I'm not saying all boomer generation of men did this, but I'm calling out this class of boomer generation of men that did it. And what those boomer generation of men created was those monsters you see out there on the TV, right? Because there could have been plenty of reasons why why a boomer generation of black male was not in the home. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just pointing out that this version of boomer generation of male was the primary one. No, it could have been any reason. It could have been the mother pushed him out because she was a feminist. You understand? But there were a lot of black male boomers. I don't want to say the majority of them, but there were quite a few of them. Like I can't put the percentage. I don't know if it was the most of them. I don't know if it was a small subset of them. But so I don't know. But there's gotta be a reason why there were women like that I just showed you. There were like plenty of them in the environment. They had to come from somewhere. And like I said, there were black boomers who run across the track and left their family and started another family somewhere else, curating that. And then now, when they change their life over and become better men, they'll shame us younger men into we need to step up as fathers. Right? See, now, this is the thing. The new generation of black women today cannot make the argument that those women are showcased you made. You know why? Because black men are the most involved fathers than every other group of men in America. So they can't use that argument. But like with the boomer generation of men, bro, like and I don't know what percentage of boomer generation of men that did this, but it gotta be a lot. because they created those monsters that you see there that I showed you. But anyway, the children left behind grew up without fathers, watching their mother struggle, become bitter, and reinterpret the situation through a feminist lens. That's where you start hearing messages like, we don't need fathers and women can do it on their own. That wasn't empowerment, it was trauma rationalization. Those women raised Gen X and early millennials with that bitterness, teaching daughters that men leave and teaching sons that fathers are optional or unreliable. That's what normalized the baby mama culture. Gen X inherited the damage directly, and early millennials spent their adulthood dealing with the fallout of broken household, absent fathers, and distorted gender expectations. So to those boomer generation of men that did this is the events that you caused. And then now today's black men get blamed for it. Gen X black men had to pick up your slack. And you talk shit to us. And a significant portion of modern family and dating dysfunction originates from the boomer men who abandoned their families first, rather than correcting or responsibly exiting unhealthy relationships. Because what was the responsible way for a boomer generation of men to exit that relationship? Be like, look here, since you own this feminist stuff, I'm just going to leave this relationship. I'm still going to be here to take care of my kids. I'm still going to be here in my children's life. I'm going to be very present with them. But you, however, I'm not going to deal with. I still protect, provide, and produce for my child. I still go to the games. I still be there, present. But I'm just going to break up with you. That was the responsible way for them to do that, but they didn't do that. This abandonment, combined with rising feminist ideology, normalized single motherhood, produced generational resentment, and destabilized black family structures across Gen X and early millennials. Boomer leavers, men enter relationships without proper vetting, had children before understanding compatibility, encountered combative or dysfunctional behavior, lacked tools to lead, correct, or enforce boundaries, chose abandonment over responsibility. Critical failure. They left after the children were created, not before. I would understand if boomer generation was in a relationship for a year with a woman and then said, man, I'm not going to keep dealing with you, and left, and didn't create no children. Then we'd have a different society and different stories to tell today. But they didn't do that. The feminism collision, this period overlapped with early feminist adoption. Traditional expectations were dissolving. Women became more confrontational. Men were not prepared to lead in that environment. Authority collapsed instead of being reasserted. So I'm guessing that's what happened. I guess the boomer generation of men were not prepared for that feminism that hit them. You know what I'm saying? They weren't prepared for women becoming confrontational with them. So they weren't prepared for that environment. Well, today's the age of black men are. Because we grew up seeing it, we grew up watching it, we grew up dealing with it. And then a lot of brothers like the Anger Man or Tommy Sotomayor or Kevin Samuels or the Black Manosphere came out and taught a lot of you guys who didn't know. Now, for me, I did know. Before Manosphere whatsoever, I did know a lot of stuff in my 20s, right? But I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn from trial and error, and I had to create my own dating framework to navigate the dating market. And a lot of times when I would say things to a lot of the older generation of men, they thought I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about and made fun of me. Or told me I was being a player. You know, and I just for simply saying, you know, if a chick don't want to go where I want to go, I'm just not going to deal with her. Old nigga told me I didn't know I was crazy for that. And I should have just went where she told me to go. So, and this was in my 20s, right? I lost my I had sex for the first time in my 20s. Like I want to say like around 19, 20 years old. And this was a chick that I had sex with at the time that, you know, whenever we would go somewhere we would date, she would respect me and treat me correctly. Was saying. So I figured a lot of stuff out early. Like I wasn't using the modern language y'all use today because of the manosphere, but I figured a lot of stuff out early, right? And the reason why I didn't have sex till I was 20 because I didn't like how I saw my peers having how they got to having sex. A lot of them were simping, or a lot of them had sex with disrespectful women. Because I'm from East New York, Brooklyn. A lot of them got chicks pregnant, so I was afraid of getting myself involved with that. So I'm saying, so it is what it is. The second family phenomenon. Many of these men did not reject family, found better women later, created structured households afterward. The issue was timing, not capacity. Damage created first children felt discarded. My fault. Damage created first children felt discarded. Resentment replaced trust. Fatherhood became associated with abandonment, right? Psychology impact on women left behind. Single mothers reframe abandonment as empowerment. Bitterness was passed to daughters. Distrust of men was normalized. Masculine authority was delegitimatized. Oh, shit, I can't even say this word. It was no longer legit. You know what I'm saying? So black women will always go back to this time and refer to, niggas ain't shit, because they would use what the boomer generation of men did, right? To invalidate masculine authority. Right. And again, I don't think this was the majority of the boomer generation of men. I believe this was a small subset of them. But it created a big problem. It created problems. Right? Because that video I showed y'all, who do those women come from? Those women that I saw that came from the 1986 or whatever they call that series or show, that became the dominant influence in the culture today. So, narrative shift. Men are unnecessary. Fathers don't matter. I can do it alone. In generational fallout, Gen X raised primarily by single mothers, normalized baby mama culture, distrustful of male leadership, reproduced instability unconsciously. Early millennials inherited broken structures, struggled with pair bonding, navigated resentment-based gender dynamics, became cleanup crew for boomer failures, right? I would say this about Gen X men. Gen X men fought tooth and nail to be in their children's lives. So I'm always going to give respect to them for that, right? The deadbeat dad bullshit, that it was bullshit. What happened was a lot of the women in the Gen X stage had good black men in their life. They just pushed them away or made it difficult for them to see their kids. Because those women were allowed to tell the story or dictate the black male narrative, that it became the narrative. And again, black women, men, this is your fault because you taught men not to speak up or stand up for themselves. Cultural outcome, and to just let women talk their shit. Because if a man responded to a woman, he was weak in his masculinity. That's what y'all taught. Cultural outcome, single motherhood normalized, deadbeat narrative universalized, male leadership non-legit, accountability blurred, family structure destabilized, right? So that is the end of this presentation. Now, I would like for y'all to remember to like, share, and subscribe to the video. This is Kish Shot Reviews and Vlogs. This is going to be the first video in the series of how the boomer generation have failed. I'm going to go into exposing how dating coaches have lied to you about the dating market. That's going to be the next series because it's very important to correct a lot of the misconceptions out there. All right. Anyway, this is Kish Yardy Reviews and Vlogs. Remember to like, share, and subscribe.